Good day po, kami po ang Lesson 8 sa Service-Oriented Architecture and Web Services. Service-Oriented Architecture or tinatawag na SOA or SOA is a design pattern for creating software applications that make use of services offered through a network such as Internet. It encourages software components to be loosely coupled so that they may be reused. SOA po, in short, is a pattern to create software application that makes use of a network mentioned before SCOM on the internet. SOA application are made up of services. This introduces the reuse of software components. A service is a software implementation of a well-defined business function that may be used by customers in a variety of applications or business processes. Muhammad 2005, in this lesson, you will be able to learn this concept and apply such concepts for system integration in the future. Meaning, it tends to provide service to the user. What do we mean when we say service? Service in which we, the software, tend to help or do something for someone. SOA or Service-Oriented Architecture is a design pattern for creating software applications that make use of services offered through a network, such as the Internet. It encourages software components to be loosely coupled so that they may be reused. SOA applications are made up services. A service is software implementation of well-defined business function that may be used by customers in a variety of application or business processes. SOA enables the reuse of existing assets, allowing for the creation of new service from an existing IT architecture or systems. In other words, it allows organizations to make the most of their existing investments by allowing them to reuse existing programs as well as ensuring compatibility across disparate system and technology. Katulad lang din po ito nung naipaliwanag ko nung una. So, dito na po tayo sa level of flexibility of SOA. Levels of flexibility of SOA. Number 1. Services are implementation-independent software components of well-defined interfaces. The separation of the service interface from its implementation is a key component of SOA. Clients who are unconcerned about how this service will carry out their demands use these services. This is where the interface and implementation differentiate. The clients that are not concerned about this will carry out the demand of service in the end. Number 2. Services are self-contained. They execute specific activities and loosely linked for independence. In short, services are independent or more likely not to link. 3. Services can be found in real time. 4. Aggregates of different services can be used to create composite services. Real time meaning actual taking place is happening. For figure 8, the figure simply shows a find by the execute paradigm in which allows the consumer of a service to ask third party registry for the service that matches its or criteria. SOA-based applications contain presentation, business logic, and persistence layers and are distributed multi-layer applications. SOA applications are built on the foundation of services. While any functionality may be turned into a service, the issue is defining the proper level of abstraction for the service interface. The functionality of the services should be coarse-grained. In this is a functionality that turns into a service, coarse-grained, where a service operates has modular scope that basic service, meaning it should increase the design complexity. Supporting interaction. The purpose of system integration is to support each of the following: human-to-human interaction, human-to-machine application interaction, and machine application-to-machine interaction. When we say integration, it refers to which if a problem may arise, it can easily change or adapt. The purpose of this is human to human or human to machine application Interaction. Construct necessary to support interaction. Different things are necessary to support interaction, such as language, English, ASP.NET, Java. Vocabulary, meaning of words, meaning of code. 3. Context, conversion, context. 4. Medium, communication channel, ability to speak and ability to listen. 5. Situation awareness, recognizing where you are, role of the person. There are things to consider to support such as interaction. So number 1 is language, programming or system language. So number 2 naman vocabulary, things to consider to convey which something meant are intended. So 3, context where the data information should be district. Yun lang po. As you can see in this picture, with computer software, a service is software that performs automated tasks, responds to hardware events, or listens for data requests from other software in a user's operating system. These services are often loaded automatically at the startup and run in the background without user interaction.
Web services. Application-to-application communication is supported through web service. It allows for integration that is loosely linked. It reduces the amount of time and effort needed to create interconnected apps. Web services allow applications or programmers to locate cooperating programs to complete a given job, allowing programming to quickly construct application by just putting applications modules together. Web services are intended to allow application modules to communicate with one another. Service apps provide transactional computing services once they are linked. In short, web service is any piece of software that makes itself available over the internet and uses a standard XML messaging system. XML is used to encode all communications to a web service. Also, a web services are XML-based information exchange systems that use the internet for direct application-to-application interaction. This system can include programs, objects, messages, or documents. 3 main parts of web services. Data is presented and shared using XML. XML-based messaging enables the communication between web services and clients. SOAP is an XML protocol that implements this communication, including the publishing, binding, and calling of a web service. Applications find services and share information and data across diverse systems environments using shared, open, emerging technology standards like SOAP, UDDI, WSDI, and etc. The service description is written in the WSDL specification. WSDL is a series of XML documents that describe the service itself, the programming interface for the service, and the location of the service. And next, how communications take place over a common network, the internet, using HTTP protocol as the transport. A network as the foundation needed to access a web service or to make a web service available. Generally, this network is based on HTTP, but it can also be based on other protocols. For example, consider a scenario of finding a plumber to fix a plumbing problem. Find the plumber in Yellow Pages, Discovery. Plumber should have advertised in the Yellow Pages, Publishing. And you call plumber to schedule an appointment, Binding. Another example, consider a simple account management and order processing system. The accounting personnel use a client application built with Visual Basic or JSP to create new accounts and enter in new customer orders. 3 basic participants. Service provider develops an application and converts into a service. They create a web service description language document describing the capabilities of the service and how to access the service. They publish the WSDL code document in a service registry. A A service provider provides the interface for the web service and the implementation of the application. The service provider is also responsible for creating the definition of the service and publishing that definition to meet the universal description, discovery, and integration specification. Note, formal publication of a web services through a web service registry is not required for a web service to be considered published. Like for example, if the web address of which the service is available is sent to a developer or a user, it is considered published. Service registry. A service registry is a way in which web services are formally published. The service registry is based on the UDDI specification and reflects information about services provided by the service provider. The service registry provides a service requestor with a web service description language, service description, and a uniform resource location that points to the service itself. Next is service requestor. Needs a service for a specific task purpose. They search for services in the service registry, meeting needs and selects service that is satisfactory. The service requestor's application invokes the provided service. Upon acceptance, application and service can exchange data using SOAP. In short, service requestor is the consumer of a web service and uses the service registry to gain information, object, and access to a web service. The three basic operations. Publishing services. In the publish operation, a service description must be published so that a service requestor can find the service. Discovering services. In the discovering operation, the service requestor receives the service description directly. It can be involved in two different lifecycle phases for the service requestor. And last is binding services. In the binding operation, the service requestor invokes or initiates an interaction with the service of in time using the binding details in the service description to locate, contact, and invoke the service.
Key Web Services Standards. So, makikita dito natin is mayroong three components of Key Web Services. First is SOAP. SOAP or Simple Object Access Protocol. Number 2 is WSDL or Web Service Description Language. Number 3 is UDDI or Universal Description, Discovery, and Implementation. So SOAP, what is SOAP or Simple Object Access Protocol? SOAP is a message protocol that enables the distributed elements of an application to communicate. SOAP is submitted to W3C or World Wide Web Consortium in 2000. SOAP 1.1 became standard in July 2003. Then sumunod is SOAP 1.2 became standard in April 2007 current. XML or Extensible Markup Language. XML-based messaging format established a transmission framework for inter-application or inter-service communication via HTTP or Hypertext Transfer Protocol. SOAP. Next dun is yung SOAP application. SOAP application is vendor neutral technology. Therefore, it was an attractive alternative to proprietary protocols such as COBRA and DCOM. Yung COBRA and DCOM daw po is wire protocol. The term wire protocol indicates that application use SOAP to move data from one place to another. Number 2 is WSDL or Web Service Description Language. What is WSDL? WSDL is the Web Service Description Language. It's an XML-based interface description language that is used for describing the functionality offered by a web service. XML based language for describing the interface of web services. So, sabi ko nga sa kanina. So, WSDL 1.1 became standards in March 2001. So, yung sumunod na is WSDL 2.0 became standard in June 2007 current. So number 3 is UDDI or Universal Description, Discover, and Implementation. So what is UDDI? So UDDI is an XML-based registry for business worldwide to list themselves on the internet. So UDDI mechanism for the dynamic discovery of service description. UDDI2 became standards in April 2003. Then yung UDDI3 became standards in February 2005, current. So next slide is a relationship between key web service standard. So dito makikita namin is merong use UDDI to search for services, use SOAP to access UDDI, and search using keywords. Next is download WSDL document from UDDI for selective services. So next is use URI information from WSDL document to invoke the service using SOAP. So next is after the service accept the request, then the application and the service can exchange data using SOAP. So makikita natin dito sa may next slide is figure 8 to 4 relationship between key web services. So yung UDDI daw is gumagana siya gamit yung SOAP. Then yung UDDI is nakaka-discover sa WSDL, then yung WSDL is gumagana din dahil sa may SOAP. So tapos yung SOAP at web services pares po silang di ko sure kung pares po silang internet protocol na pwede magpalitan po ng information. Yun po. Din sa may next slide is client server and peer-to-peer architecture. Service-oriented architecture is more like peer-to-peer architecture. So makita natin sa picture is merong HTTP request and HTTP response. So merong client and server. So yun yung client-server architecture. Parang siya peer-to-peer nga, nagkapalitan po sila ng message or information. Yun po. Dito sa may next picture po is merong server client 1 and client 2. So yung client 1 and client 2, nag-exchange sila ng message, then pupunta po nila sa server. Then server, babalik po ulit nila sa may client 1 and client 2. Yung po yung peer-to-peer architecture. Dito sa may baba po nun is SOA more like client server or peer-to-peer architecture, then SOA is more like peer-to-peer architecture. Then sa may next slide is web-based application development architecture. Kung makikita tayo ng presentation, browser, business web application server, database server. So synchronous silang tatlo. So sa may presentation browser, may makita tayo doon na meron siyang components na dump client browser, no install logic, presentation related processing. So sa may business web application server, may makita tayo doon na intelligent application and web server, presentation logic, business rules, connection pooling, componentized application logic, and then bulk of parsing. So sa may database server, may makita tayong database server, data related logic, some business rule, data related processing, less connection per user. Dito sa may next slide is application integration. So makikita natin dito yung server A and server B. So yung server A is parang pupunta siya sa may server B, then yung server B babalik niya sa may server A, then ibabalik niya ulit sa kanya sa server B. So parang nangyari dito is papalitan po sila ng information para gumana yung server, ganun po.
Good day, I am Mark Laurenciera and this is my report. Application Integration as Services. In Figure 8.8, here in the diagram is an example of application integration as services, and as you can see, the wrapper is located in the middle. It serves as a middleware for distributed application in A and B. Middleware techniques and integration pattern can be applied to develop these wrapper services. In Figure 8.9, this diagram shows the logical representation the web service designed on integration. Here you can see the integration where service interface are added. Figure 8.10, here is the full diagram for further explanation. The integration layer introduced by the web services framework establishes a standard university recognized and supporting programmatic interface. WSDL or Web Service Description Language enables communication between these layers by providing standardized endpoints descriptions. You can see it in the next figure. In the figure 8.11, this is the WSDL or Web Services Description Language composed of of abstract and concrete. And next is, what is abstract? Abstract is the description of a web service interface that is independent of implementation details. Abstract interface definition is made up of interface and message elements. Next is, what is concrete? Concrete specifies location and implementation of information about a web service. Concrete interface definition is made up of blinding endpoints and service elements. Next is WSDL definitions, elements of abstract interface definition. 1. Interface. This contains a group of logical related operations. Number 2. Operations. This represents a single action or function performed by an application. For example, method in an application. Operations consist of group of related input and output message. Message exchange required to support execution of the operation. Number 3. Message element can contain one or more input or output parameter that belongs to an operation. Part elements are used to define parameters. Part elements provides a name, value set, along with an associated data type. Next is YSDL definitions, elements of concrete, implementation, and definition. 1 is service. This represents one or more endpoints at which the web service can be accessed. Number 2, endpoint. This consists of location, URI, and protocol information. Number 3, binding. This defines invocation requirements of each of its operation, associates protocol and message format information to operations. Operations construct within binding block resembles its counterparts in the interface section. Each endpoint can reference to a binding elements and therefore relates the endpoint information to the underlying operation. Last one for my report today is YSDL supplementary constructs. Provide additional informations about service. Next is type element. Provide data type support for web service definitions. XSD schema information is provided. And last is C. Documentation elements allow supplementary annotations to be added. And the next topic to be discussed by my other group mates is Simple Objects Access Protocol or SOAP. Thank you.
Simple Object Access Protocol or SOAP. Ang Simple Object Access Protocol or SOAP or SOAP ay isang message protocol kung saan ine-enable niya yung distributed elements ng isang application to communicate. SOAP can be carried over a variety of standard protocols including web-related HTTP or yung Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Yung SOAP daw ay gumagawa ng isang standard message format na naglalaman ng XML document na capable mag-host ng RPC at document-centric na payload. Yung XML document ay isang file format na responsable sa pag-store, pag-transmit at pag-reconstruct ng arbitrary data. Document-centric is most commonly used due to standard endpoint description is provided by WSDL o yung Web Service Document Language na nabanggit kanina. At nag-enable din ang SOAP ng synchronous o yung request and response ngayon at asynchronous which is process-driven na data exchange model. Dumako naman tayo dito sa figure 8.12 na kung saan makikita natin yung dalawang uri ng payload which is yung RPC at document-centric na payload ay nakapaloob dun sa isang SOAP message. Kung mapapansin nyo, para siyang envelope na kung saan nakalagay dun yung mga file o parang sulat na pinapadala sa magkabilang panig or application. Now let us move to the SOAP message structure. So ano nga ba yung mga nilalaman ng isang SOAP message? Una na dito ay yung root envelope. The root envelope
element frames the message document consists of mandatory body element and an optional header element. Ang root envelope ay isa siyang root element ng XML document na nagre-represent sa message. Next is yung header. Header element is used for including implementation of SOAP extensions, identification of target SOAP intermediaries, process information for SOAP intermediaries, providing supplementary meta information about SOAP message. In addition, it is a generic mechanism for adding features to SOAP message. It can contain any number of elements that define extensions to the base protocol. For example, header child elements might define authentication information, transaction information, local information, and so on. Next is the body element. The body is a container for mandatory information intended for ultimate recipient of the message. So, within the body element, data being delivered by the SOAP message is included. Fault element can be used. Host exception information embedded with body element. So, yung fault element ang ginagamit para mag-indicate ng mga error message. Makikita natin sa example yung structure ng isang SOAP message. Makikita nating nakabalot yung envelope sa header at body. Laman ng header yung shipping, then ang laman ng body yung mismong XML document. Then makikita natin yung fault element na nakapaloob din siya sa body. Universal Description Discovery and Implementation, or UDDI. Fundamental of SOA is a mechanism for service descriptions to be discovered by potential requestors. UDDI is a central directory that hosts service description, including WSDL. UDDI specifies a registry that stores service description within a category. UDDI registry can be public registry, a global directory of services, or private registry, a repository for services hosted within an organization. UDDI is a specification for service description and discovery. In summary, UDDI is SOAP-based protocol that defines how clients communicate with UDDI registries. It is a particular set of global replicated registries. Now let us identify the UDDI registry elements. First one is business entities or business entity element. It provides profile information about registered business, including name, a description, and a unique identifier or ID. Next is business services or business services element. Records of actual services offered by the registered business are nested within the business entity element. Next is specification pointers or binding template element. Provides address linking the business service to implementation information. Developer can learn how and where to physical bind to a web service. The specification pointers or binding template element is focused on technical. Next is service types. Points to location of service interface definitions, message formats, as well as message and security protocols. Next is business relationship or publisher assertion element. It provides a means of establishing the relationship of current business entity with another. Last is the subscriptions or subscription element. It allows subscribers to be notified when business entity profile information is updated. Dito sa figure 8.14 makikita natin yung mga UDDI registry elements kung saan sila nakapaloob. Accessing UDDI registry. UDDI provides inquiry and publish APIs allowing applications to interface programmatically with registry. Registries are expected to provide interface for humans as well. Hindi lang sa mga applications nagpo-provide ng service yung mga registries, kundi sa humans din or user. Makikita natin sa figure 8.15, makikita dito na yung applications and humans ay naghahanap sila ng particular na service dun sa service registry. And yung service registry naman yung hahanap at magbibigay sa kanila ng service na kailangan nila.
Arigato gozaimasu.